Hello, this is Will with the Budget Knitter Podcast. I'm coming to you today with a review of the Loops and Threads Knit Quick from Michaels. So if you are unfamiliar with what this is a knitting machine very similar to the Addy, but at a very low price point in comparison. So this is Michaels brand. Loops and Threads is the Michaels brand, and this runs for about $75 at my local Michaels. When I went, though, I did use a 40% off coupon, and I got this for $45, and I have to say that I'm actually really enjoying this. Now, I've already unboxed mine and used it a little bit, but a little bit about what comes in it, other than the machine. You are also going to get some weight clips. Now, I haven't used these because I haven't really found it necessary. I'm also not really sure how to attach them. But it comes with weight clips if you know how to use them or you want to look further into what they are used for. I haven't found them necessary, but it does come with 6 of those. The other thing is it does come with this set of instructions. Now, it does come in pieces. The legs are not assembled, and you have to put on, there is a tension guide that has to be inserted as well. It also does come with a crochet hook and a short needle, but of course, being the person that I am, I have already lost those things. Now, the crochet hook and short needle, they are just really basic, really cheap plastic tools. If you are an experienced person in the fiber community, you probably already have a crochet hook. If you're a knitter, you probably have one for picking up drop stitches, and most everybody should have some sort of tapestry needle for weaving in your ends or seaming items. That is basically all that those are. So if you have some of those and you end up losing ones that come with the set, don't worry, it's not anything special. They just include that if this is the only way that you do any kind of knitting. So a little bit more about the machine. So here it does say, the set includes the loom, the 4 legs, 6 weight clips, the tension guide, the crochet hook, the short needle, and the instruction manual, which we have gone over here. Now there's a switch on the side of the machine, and T and F. Basically, you can do a tube knit and a flat knit. Now, for some reason, my machine has a P here instead of an F. I don't know what that's supposed to mean, but it's basically the same thing. Up for tubular knitting, down for flat knitting. I have not personally done any flat knitting on this machine. I just use it to do circular knitting, which I think is the most fun. But anyway, assembling the machine, you are going to have to insert the legs and the tension guide and get that all set up. The other thing that I really want to point out about this machine is that it works with yarns lighter than worsted weight. Do not use worsted weight or thicker, as it may jam or damage the machine. That is very, very important. So one of the big complaints about this machine is that it tends to break easily. What I have found is that if you follow the instructions that are in this booklet, you are less likely to damage the machine and you are likely to get more use out of it. So do not use worsted weight. I actually was a little disappointed that I couldn't use worsted weight because that was a lot of the yarn that I had intended to use. But that being said, I have found that it works really well for DK and lower. So if you have a lot of DK, sport, or fingering weight yarns, this works really well for that. So it goes through all of the setup, how to use the machine, how to put the yarn on, how to cast off, all of that information. It's just a couple of pages to read. And then of course it has it in French and Spanish as well. There is information here on picking up a dropped stitch. I have found that that does happen. Information about changing colors or if you run out of yarn. So everything you need to know about using this machine is in here. So I just want to show you a little bit about how it works and the machine that I have going currently. So let me go ahead and move that. So here is my machine. And as you can see, I've already started with some pink yarn on here. This is Gardenia Danny Blatt. This is a 75% cotton, 25% viscose yarn. It is only 50 grams. It's a really small ball here. Now, one of the other things I want to be clear about when using this machine is that you should not pull off of the skein. You should pull off a section of yarn that you are going to wind on and stop when you reach the skein again. The reason for that is all of the pieces in this machine are plastic. There is very little metal that's in this machine. So it's also not very high quality plastic, so it will wear down. Having watched a few videos on people who have taken theirs apart, it is very cheap plastic. It will wear away eventually. But I found that if you try to follow the instructions on how to use the machine, you will probably have less issues with it pulling or wearing away the plastic, and you will get much more use out of this machine. Please remember that this is basically a toy. It is essentially disposable, and if you were to get one, it would be best to think of it in a disposable manner. Michaels usually does pretty well with returns, being that this is an item that damages easily, and they're aware of that issue. That being said, if you are trying to get more use out of this, just try to follow the instructions and do everything you can to try and take care of it. So far, I've had this for a couple of months, and it's actually working really well for me. So I've already cast it on here, and you can see there's not much going on. I've done about 2 rounds, so I did my cast on and I've done 2 rounds. So I'm doing tubular knitting, and the great thing about this is just how simple the mechanics are. So if you see here, we have our tension guide, which is where the yarn is coming up, and this is the one thing that keeps the yarn a little snug. You don't want a lot of tension, otherwise it pulls, and that's not what we want. The yarn then feeds, and there are these hooks here, and the yarn goes under the hook. It's basically a giant crochet hook in a way. And the yarn goes under that hook, which then pulls it down and through the previous loop from the previous row. When it comes up here, it pops off the loop that's being held, flips it to the back, and pulls up the loop that they had pulled down previously over here, and sets it on the outer side so that it can pull the yarn through that loop. It's pretty fun mechanics to watch, so I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit of slow cranking here so that you can kind of see what's going on. I realize from a top-down angle you may not get to see all of the mechanics, but I do encourage you to think about getting one of these so you can actually look more closely if this is something that interests you. Otherwise, it really is kind of cool to watch. So I'm going to go ahead and go a little slow here. Well, okay, so one of the things is it doesn't have the greatest stability, and part of the reason is my yarn is really tense. Also, the thicker the yarn, the less that it likes to pull through lightly, but as you can see here, this is kind of the mechanics of the machine. It's a really cool and ingenious device, and it's great for just really simple, quick projects. You can do hats, you can do scarves, again, you can do flat pieces. I know people have used these to do sock blanks for dyeing. It's a really cool machine, and so you just crank, and it goes around and around and around. So there is a black hook here. That's that signifies your beginning of round. So once you kind of get the hang of it, especially the first couple of rows, I like to go a little slower just to kind of get everything settled and see if it's going to work with the yarn. I have found that it doesn't work with some yarns or some types of fiber contents, or if it's just really, if it's got like a halo, it tends to shed a lot just because of the way it's moving through the machine. But the first few rounds, just kind of do it slow, see how it works with the yarn, see if it likes it. And then once you think you've got the hang of it, you can see this yarn comes off of this ball twisted, and so it likes to turn on itself. But then you just crank away. Just look at that. It's so mesmerizing. And then when you get to where you're back to being on the ball or the cake or skein, whatever you're winding off of, you can pull more yarn off. And so what I've done is I've made a lot of tube scarves with this. And if you want to see more about that, I do have a podcast where I show a lot of those finished objects of the scarves made from this machine. A lot of people make hats with this. Usually what you do is you wind until the tube hits the table, and then you cast off, and you just cinch the top of it. So you'll weave the final end through the top, all of the stitches to get it off the machine, and then you can just cinch the top, add a pom-pom, and there you go. You've got an easy hat. People have told me it only takes about 30 minutes to make a hat if you're really determined and cranking pretty at a good click. I have made a scarf in about, I want to say, it didn't take me very long. So you can see here, this is where it didn't really like the yarn. It didn't pull through a loop. This is not a dropped stitch. As much as it looks like one, it is more of a really weird float. But we didn't drop it. It got picked up some other way. Not really sure how that happened. But that's just the nature of the machine. So different yarns behave in different ways on this. I have found that fingering weight is probably my favorite to work with. I have done some sport and I have done some DK. I think DK gives the fullest look. Fingering, well, because it only has one gauge. So with fingering, sport, and DK weight, the stitches are all going to be the same distance apart. The only difference is that the thicker the yarn, the more it fills out in the final item. So that's just something to keep in mind. I've found that hats work best in fingering weight. Unless you're doing it for a child, then you can get up to DK weight. But most of the time, hats are going to be best in fingering or sport weight. But this is a fun machine to experiment with. It's a fun machine if you have like a weird skein of yarn and you bought it and you don't know what to do with it. It just doesn't fit in your color wheelhouse, or it just doesn't work with any of the other fibers that you have, or it just doesn't mesh with your colors, or it's just not your vibe. Maybe it was a gift from somebody who was like, oh, they like yarn, I'll give them yarn, but they didn't really think about what you might like as a color or whatever. This is a great way to just kind of use that up. You can then turn around if you just... So I like to make tube scarves, again, and you can just finish the scarf, take it off, cinch both ends, put some pom-poms on the end, and voila, you've got a fully formed tube scarf in about an hour. And then you could give that as a gift around the holiday season, or if somebody's got a special occasion coming up and you're scrambling to get something done. This is a great way to use up that yarn, to stash bust, and to have a awesome pile for gifts or charity. This would be great for charity. If you were somebody who loves to do charity gifts, this is a machine that would work great for you. I really encourage you to give it a shot. Check it out at your local Michael's. Keep an eye on the coupons. I know sometimes they have some amazing sales where you can get up to like 60% off of a regular priced item. My understanding is that this almost never goes on sale, so it's almost always regular price. You should always be able to use a coupon. And the great thing from the cashier, two cashiers at Michael's have told me this, the coupon works on the highest priced regular priced item. So if you don't have anything that costs more than $75, the coupon's going to take the price off of this, or the percentage off of this. Give it a shot, take a look, see what you think. If this is something you want to try, I definitely encourage you to do it. If you're not ready to invest the money, see if you know anybody else that might have one, or see if your local yarn store has any kind of knitting machine. I know some of them are actually keeping Addies in their store now. I loved the Addie, that's why I bought this. The Addie is about $300. I didn't have $300, so this was a great budget option for what I was trying to use it for. But if you're just interested in the mechanics of the knitting machine and just want to give it a shot, see if your local yarn store has an Addie or a similar machine. Give it a go, see how you like it. I love this. I do use it on pretty much a weekly basis, and it's holding up for me really well. We'll see what happens in a few months as it gets a little more use. I know some people say they've made it about 6 months before it breaks, but I'm hoping I can make it last a little longer than that. So that's my review of the Loops and Threads Knit Quick. It's at Michael's. Check it out, and I will see you again very soon here on the Budget Knitter podcast channel. Thanks!